A 12-year-old boy fights hunger and despair after his father's sudden death, but when a teacher steps in to help, it sparks a chain reaction that changes their lives forever. What happens next will make you rethink the power of kindness. Stay till the end to see how far one act of compassion can go. In a small town in Ohio, life was never easy for Jacob and his mother. When Jacob's father passed away suddenly 3 years ago, everything changed overnight. At just 12 years old, Jacob found himself stepping into roles no child should have to take on so soon. His mother worked 2 jobs but still struggled to keep food on the table. The bills piled up faster than they could pay them off, and every day felt like climbing an endless mountain. Jacob lived with his mom in a quiet neighborhood where everyone seemed too busy with their own lives to notice theirs falling apart. Their house wasn't fancy. It had chipped paint on the walls and creaky floorboards, but it was home. Or at least it used to feel that way before sadness filled its corners. Every morning, Jacob woke up early to help around the house while his mom left for work before sunrise. By the time he got back from school, she'd already be gone again, heading straight to her second job. One evening, after finishing dinner, a simple meal of rice and beans, they sat together at the kitchen table. Jacob watched as his mom counted out cash under the dim light of an old lamp. She sighed deeply, rubbing her temples. "We'll make it through," she said softly, more to herself than to him. But Jacob knew better. He saw how tired she looked, how her hands trembled slightly when she thought no one was watching. School became harder for Jacob over time. Hunger gnawed at him during class, making it impossible to focus. Some days, all he ate was a slice of bread in the morning because there wasn't enough food left. His teacher, Mr. Daniels, noticed something was wrong almost immediately. Jacob used to raise his hand often, eager to answer questions. Now, he barely spoke unless called upon, staring blankly at the board or resting his head on his desk. One afternoon, Mr. Daniels approached Jacob after class. "Hey, buddy," he said gently, kneeling down to meet Jacob's gaze. "You've been quiet lately. Is everything okay?" Jacob hesitated, unsure if he should say anything. Finally, he shook his head. "No, sir," he admitted quietly. "Things are hard right now." Mr. Daniels didn't push further then, but later that week he brought Jacob a sandwich during a lunch break. It wasn't much, just peanut butter and jelly, but to Jacob, it felt like the world. For the first time in weeks, his stomach didn't ache as badly. As they talked, Jacob opened up about his struggles at home. Mr. Daniels listened carefully, nodding along without interrupting. When Jacob finished speaking, tears welled up in his eyes. "I'm sorry you're going through this," Mr. Daniels said finally. "But let me tell you something important. You don't have to face it alone. I'm here to help." That night, Jacob went home feeling lighter somehow. He didn't know what Mr. Daniels planned to do, but those words stuck with him. You don't have to face it alone. They gave him hope when he needed it most. Little did Jacob realize, these words would change not only his life, but also his family's future forever. The next morning, Jacob woke up feeling different. For the first time in weeks, there was a small spark of hope inside him. He didn't know what Mr. Daniels had planned, but he trusted him. That afternoon, after school, Mr. Daniels drove Jacob to a grocery store. They filled 2 large bags with essentials: rice, beans, canned goods, bread, and even some fruit. Jacob's eyes widened as they packed the car. "This is for us?" he asked hesitantly. "Yes," Mr. Daniels replied with a warm smile. "And it's not just this one time. I'll make sure your family has enough every month." When they arrived home, Jacob carried the groceries inside while Mr. Daniels helped arrange them on the shelves. Jacob's mom wasn't back yet, so Mr. Daniels left a note explaining everything. When she returned later that evening, exhausted from her long day, Jacob showed her the food. At first, she froze, her hands trembling as she touched the neatly stacked cans and boxes. Then tears streamed down her face. "Who did this?" she whispered, her voice shaking. "It was Mr. Daniels," Jacob explained softly. "He said we don't have to worry anymore. He'll keep helping us." For the first time in years, Jacob saw his mother smile. A real, genuine smile. It was like watching the sun break through storm clouds. Over the following months, life slowly began to improve for Jacob and his mom. With the weight of hunger lifted, Jacob could focus better at school. His grades improved, and he started participating more in class. Teachers noticed the change in him. He was no longer the quiet boy sitting in the corner. Instead, he became curious, asking questions and engaging with others. Mr. Daniels didn't stop at groceries. He spoke to the school administration about waiving certain fees for Jacob, ensuring he wouldn't miss out on opportunities because of money. He also encouraged Jacob to dream bigger. "Education is your ticket to a better future," Mr. Daniels told him one day. "No matter how hard things get now, never give up on learning." Jacob took those words to heart. Every night after finishing his homework, he'd sit by the window and imagine a brighter future, not just for himself, but for his mom, too. 2 years passed, and Jacob's hard work paid off. In 8th grade, he earned top marks in his class and received a scholarship to attend a prestigious high school in another town. The news brought mixed emotions. On one hand, Jacob was thrilled. He'd never dreamed of such an opportunity. On the other hand, leaving his mom behind felt unbearable. "I can't go," Jacob said one evening, pacing their tiny living room. "What will you do without me here?" His mom placed a hand on his shoulder, her expression firm but loving. "You're going," she said. "This is your chance, Jacob. Don't let fear hold you back. I'll be fine. You've already done so much for me. Now it's my turn to support you." With tears in his eyes, Jacob hugged her tightly. At the new school, Jacob faced challenges. Being away from home was harder than he'd expected. But whenever doubt crept in, he remembered Mr. Daniels' words. "Focus on your education. It's the key to overcoming anything." Slowly, Jacob adapted. He made friends, joined clubs, and excelled academically. By senior year, he earned another scholarship, this time to a university across the country. Before leaving, Jacob visited Mr. Daniels one last time. Standing in front of his former teacher, Jacob struggled to find the right words. Finally, he simply said, "Thank you. For everything." Mr. Daniels smiled, patting Jacob on the back. "You did all the hard work, Jacob. Remember, kindness isn't meant to be repaid, it's meant to be passed forward." Years later, Jacob graduated from college and landed a job at a tech company. With his first paycheck, he sent half the amount to his mom. She called him crying, saying, "We finally made it, Jacob." We really did. But Jacob knew the journey wasn't over. One weekend, he drove back to his hometown. He found Mr. Daniels retired and living modestly. Jacob knocked on the door, holding a bag of groceries and a heartfelt letter. "I wanted to thank you properly," Jacob said when Mr. Daniels opened the door. "You changed my life, and now I want to help you however I can." Mr. Daniels chuckled, wiping a tear from his eye. "Looks like my lesson stuck with you after all." As Jacob stood there, he realized something profound. Kindness creates ripples. Small actions can grow into waves of change. And though his story began with struggle, it ended with gratitude, love, and a promise to pay it forward.